You're listening to Lemon's Listening Library. Discover the story behind the stories with unique and raw conversations from the people who make your favorite books a reality. Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. I'm Randy Lemons, and I'm a fantasy author for most of you who are listening, and I already fucked this up, so I'm going to restart. I do this so often.
I was like, my brain was like, wait, what?
I'm dyslexic as hell, so once it's in and we're like having conversations, a lot of times we can just skip over it and it's not a big deal. But as soon as we start off with it, I'm like, okay, I need to at least get my shit together for this part. Okay, try again. Welcome to this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. I'm Randy Lemons, fantasy author, or RL Rose to those of you in the romance community. And today I am joined with my amazing partner in crime, Kathy. Kathy, do you want to tell everyone about yourself?
Hey, y'all. My name is Kathy Ireland. I am your forever endearing co-host, and I do audiobook production management. And I consume most of my books with audiobooks, so I'm super excited about our guest today.
I'm so excited. But before we tell you who we're going to talk to today, I do have to do the housekeeping notes. We're doing something really cool on Threads right now. We are having a book competition for book covers, and we are going to host whoever wins as a cover on our podcast, and we're going to advertise their book for the entire month. So go check that out if you want to submit into it. We're going to pick on Monday, and then we're going to narrow it down to 10, and then we'll pick from those 10. We'll allow you guys to vote on it. So super fun. It's something for indie authors that we are promoting them for. So go check it out and vote for your favorite one when it comes down to the last 10. If you want to have your stuff advertised on our show, aside from that, you can go check out our Patreon account. It's a great way to support our show and to get your stuff out there into other bookies and get your stuff out there for people to see that you have it. And now we are going to introduce our amazing guest today, Grayson Owens. Will you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hey, everybody. My name is Grayson Owens. I am a professional actor and professional educator, and I've worked in theater, film, television, and voiceover work. I just started doing the narration about 4 years ago, and I work in multiple genres, but mostly in romance, and I do a lot of genres within the romance industry as well. I live in the Midwest. And I'm really looking forward to snow soon. I'm hoping very soon, actually.
Yeah, it's gotten cold here recently, so we might.
Finally, yeah. We haven't had really great winters here, and I missed that from living in New York. When I lived in New York, I loved having the winters there, but we have not had very much snow here in the Midwest very much in the last couple of years.
Yeah, the 40s here, which was like super exciting.
Yeah, I think it's in the 50s today here, so it's nice.
Well, I'm in Florida, so.
Oh my! You got in the 40s in Florida, really?
Yes, I had my door open. Are you kidding me? It was amazing.
The hurricane threw their system all out of whack down there.
Right?
Wow.
It's all whacked.
Don't know if it was really worth that, but still, it's kind of nice to have the cool weather.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You briefly said that you've done a lot of titles, but you've done over 100 titles, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's in the can waiting to come out. But I think that the release of Britt Benson's Better Than the Beach that came out this week was the one that pushed me over 100 titles. So I think I just hit 100.
That's amazing.
Between me and the other name that I narrate under, yeah.
Like advertise that? Because I don't think I've seen that. My presence on social media has been.
I'm so bad at self-promotion.
All right, I'll do it for you.
Yeah, so I need to double. Do what?
Send me the cover and stuff, and I'll do it.
I will. I need to double check the number too. It's weird because there were a couple of titles that I did recently that didn't go straight to Audible, and so a lot of people base the numbers on Audible, and so I haven't really double checked that recently to make sure that everything is up there now to show that I've done 100. But yes, I will double check and I will send you the screenshot for Britt's book.
For sure. That's exciting.
So you started off as a professional actor and educator, and was there like a calling into the narration thing, or was it just kind of like, okay, I've kind of expanded my knowledge in this area, let's see if we can expand it in this area?
Well, so yeah, I moved from New York back home in 2006, mainly because for as an actor in theater and film and television, um, I had trouble getting work because I look a lot younger than I am, which you would think is a good thing, but I act a lot older than I am, and so I had this maturity to me that casting directors would call me in, and my headshot made me look like the frat boy or the surfer dude, and I would come in talking like the 40-year-old father. So I hit this point in my career where casting directors are saying, "Man, you're going to work all the time when you're in your 40s," and I was like, "I don't want to wait 20 years, in New York, paying $1,800 for a postage stamp apartment." So, and my parents were getting older, so I decided to move back home and kind of be and raise a family and kind of be around my family for a while. And that's how I got into teaching eventually. I tried banking for a while because I thought if I made a lot of money, I wouldn't care anymore about not being in theater and acting, and that didn't last very long. And then I became the managing producer of an outdoor theater drama thing about Abraham Lincoln's life, which was really fun. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I found myself teaching. And so when I started teaching, one of my students asked how to get into audiobooks. They really wanted to do that, and I had no idea. But I went to college. I went to undergrad with Marnie Young, and so I knew I had seen social media posts that she was doing audiobooks and that she had started her own production company. And so I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, can you give my students some advice?" And she goes, "I have a one sheet prepared for when people ask me this question, and I'll send it to you." And I said, "Okay." And she goes, "I don't. I remember that you have a decent voice. Have you ever done them before?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Well, do you want to send some samples in?" Um, and I'm a Virgo, so it took me 2 months of planning and researching before I could actually create a sample. And so I created a various amounts of samples and sent those to her, and they were all like from like horror books and thriller books and those kind of genres that I really wanted to do. And the first thing that she sent me was was an audition for a romance, which I didn't. Most of the guys have these really deep, like Christian Bale, Batman kind of voices, which I don't, and so I didn't really ever picture myself doing that. But I did. I submitted an audition for Heather Long for her Untouchable series, and I ended up landing that, and that ended up being a 12 book. It turned into a 12 book deal. I think at the time that I signed on, it was like only 10, and then it became 12. Um, and so that was how I got into it. I mean, Marnie kind of brought me into it and believed in me, and Audio Sorceress was really good to me for quite a few years of getting me work. And it was just a hobby for me, really. I was just kind of doing it, during the summers and when I could around my teaching schedule until about a year ago when things kind of blew up in a way that I wasn't expecting them to. And so I'm still teaching, but I'm definitely narrating a lot more than I was about 2 years ago.
So you teach like high school or something, like actual teaching, like something.
I'm a college professor, so I'm a college
Okay.
acting. Yeah,
Okay.
uh, yeah. So I teach acting. For many years, I've been the main acting instructor at a liberal arts university, and last year we added in a musical theater instructor as well. So yeah, I typically take an entire class through 4 years of pretty intensive training for a program our size.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
So I have a question for you really quick.
yeah.
When you were working as the banker and you were like, okay, I feel like money's the thing, it'll make me happy and everything. Like, was there did you have like a moment where you're like, this isn't working because you felt, something? Was there emotions that kind of felt suppressed, or were you just drained, or was there any significant like, I don't want to be doing this and only this?
You know, I I'm sorry, I'm about to blab, but I went into banking because my uncle was a banker, and this was when I was younger, and so there was very much a small town mentality here, and so as as a manager of one of the very few banks that we had here in my hometown, he was like known by everybody. Like he would walk into a restaurant and everybody would get up and shake his hand because, you know, he had given them the loan for their houses and their cars and their children's education. And there, to be honest with you, when I got into it, there was that part of it too. I was like, there's a social aspect to it. But the first job I had was with one of the big commercial banks here. And it was just all about cross-selling products and charging people fees. And the more that I did that, like I was a customer service manager, so I had a lot of interaction with the customers, but it was all, God, I hate saying this in public, but it was all me stealing money from people. And I didn't like it. And you know, for actors, a lot of times when you hit a rough spot, people say, get away from it for a while. And if you can't stop thinking about it, then you know it's the right thing to be doing. And I had kind of a cushy pathway because I went to undergrad at a pretty well-known undergrad, and then I got into NYU, and so I went to NYU, and NYU kind of opened doors that everything just kind of fell into place one step after another. And so I just kept doing it because I had that pathway. And when the time did get rough and I wasn't really getting a lot of work in film and television, which is what I wanted to start doing, I had to make some choices. And so and I was having trouble because I didn't like auditioning anymore. And I became obsessive with trying to get the auditions, and so it backfired on me because I thought I could just give it up. And instead, what I found is that I couldn't. And so, yes, there was that kind of sense of calling every day of sitting in that stupid desk at the bank. Um, and so I was so fortunate when the managing producer position opened up because it got me back into theater. But even that was still more on the business side of things. And, you know, watching the artistic director direct the show and the actors be in the show, it still made me want to do that again. And I think teaching is the first thing outside of directly acting that made me feel a part of it again. Because teaching students, I've learned more from my students than I ever did as a student. You know, watching them struggle, watching them fail in every beautiful way. And so I've learned a lot from them as an actor. And the times that I get really excited as an educator are those times when my students are up on stage and they're performing, and I want so badly to get up there and get on stage with them. And so, you know, the unfortunate thing is where I am in the Midwest. I'm union, I'm SAG and equity, and so there's not a lot of opportunities around here for me. And so audiobooks ended up being that perfect thing. So now I have the balance of both things, which kind of makes it a perfect life. And the fact that I get the benefit of teaching students, but then I also get to sit in my booth and pretend for a few hours every day.
So, Grayson, so you were in SAG as an actor,
Mm-hmm.
right? So does that just transfer over to being like the narrator side of it as well, or is that like a whole different side of?
So I mean, it is the same union because when SAG and AFTRA merged, it became the same union.
Oh,
But that being said, the work that I do in film and television, this is all just back end stuff to a certain extent. But the work that I do in film and television qualifies me for a different health insurance plan and a pension plan
oh yeah.
than the work that I do in audiobooks. So I'm still not really making much money in
Well, not,
TV and film. It's
okay.
all on the after side of things. So for the first time in, again, almost my entire career, I'm actually making enough money now that I'm earning the health insurance, which I don't need because I'm teaching. So that's really the only difference. I got my SAG card. I played a dancing Nazi in the producer's musical movie. And I got my SAG card doing that. And then after merged with them, I think like 3 or 4 years after I got my card. So I just kind of got into after because of that.
I think that you are like the second or third person who has said that, they had the idea, and the male narrators had this idea of narrating certain things, and then they just get pulled into the romance community. And I think that that's funny because your idea of like a romance, big popular guy is having the really deep, scratchy voice. But if they're solo and they try to read the female parts, it's not going to do the same as someone who has a voice that can go to the deep side and go to the more femme side, and it balances it.
Well, and I think, well, and so for instance, like that very first series that I got with Heather Long, those characters were seniors in high school through college and then after college. So it made sense for me because I didn't have that extremely deep register to my voice naturally. It worked, and a lot of the books that I did early on were that. It was like these younger characters. Um, and so but then what happened is that specifically I think starting with that series, it was a reverse harem book, and so a why choose book, and so um, there were four main male characters, and so I quickly began to get trained in what I really enjoy, which is having these four very diverse characters that I got to play with in that series, and making sure that they sounded different, and then all of the superciliary characters in the show that I got to play as well. And I think kind of that's one of the things that I've become known for, is because I have a little bit of versatility. Though it doesn't seem to matter as much anymore because everybody wants duet. So that begins to kill, what I think I do well, which is being able to do those dual narrations, and have differentiation of character. But so I still love dual over duet because of that.
I really find that most of the authors, and I'm wondering, so I have two questions within that. Are you
Sure.
finding that most of the authors are leaning towards the duet?
Well, I think the listeners are leaning towards the duet, and that makes the authors want to do it. Duet is so much more expensive for authors,
Oh,
almost prohibitively so.
yeah.
And so I
I'm
think
more.
that well, and it's because of I think a lot of it has to do with SAG regulations, because the SAG requirement for the payment is that if I'm narrating a book, you're basically only paying me for the part of the book that I've narrated, right? But when you're doing duet, if I have a POV chapter, they have to pay me for the entirety of that POV chapter, plus they have to pay the female or the other co-narrator for their portion of that, or actually for that the entirety of that same, no, just their portion of that chapter as well. So they're double paying for certain chapters. They're not just paying for the time that my voice is in the book, if that makes sense. So
It's
and there's significantly higher engineering costs, because the engineer has to do a lot of work of piecing everything together and making it sound like it was recorded together. And so I think authors do like it, and a lot of the authors that I've worked for, as they've grown, they have begun to get into more duet and multicast productions. Kayla Gross, who I work for a lot, is beginning to try to work more towards that. um, and so I think people are. It used to be that audiobooks was a very detached thing. A narrator kind of read it as a detached outside viewer of the book. And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why I never got into audiobooks before, because I found them kind of boring. They really put me to sleep. And so then I think, this is all happening relatively fast, but I think then more actors started doing it, and so it became a little bit more dramatic in the interpretation of it, and then that immediately led to wanting it to sound like a radio play, or a movie without visuals. And so I think it's all progressing to that, and I do understand why people enjoy that. It's just, as an actor, I prefer the challenge of dual work over duet.
well, I
So,
think.
Kathy, before you ask your next question, I want to comment on that really quick. I started reading audiobooks because I'm dyslexic and I have a really hard time just reading. But when I started reading them, it was when it was just like someone was reading me a book without the big, dramatic voices and stuff. And me and Kathy were just talking about this earlier, how my taste has shifted. And now that I'm going back into listening to some of the older books, I'm finding it more difficult to retain the detail, to stay into it because it's so different. So I'm one of those people who started there and enjoy the other one more.
Yeah, and I get that. I really do. I respect it 100%.
Yeah, I think too that the quality of the bending expertise, if you will, has increased so that you know the guys are doing the guys are doing such a higher quality job of doing the the female voice in the dual narration, and then
Well,
there's female narrators as Samantha Brentmore is like phenomenal at doing them.
oh my God,
It was just
she's gonna put us all of the men out of business. Yeah.
right. She's fucking amazing.
She is. She really. There's a lot that are like that. I mean, I think Maxine Mitchell does a really great job with male voices too. I mean, there was a series of social media posts that went around for a while where the women were all doing these men voices, and they were so strong in it. And then I think Teddy Hamilton came out with one of him doing female voices, and so I created one that was me doing animals because I was like, there's nothing left. Um, so yeah, and to be honest with you, in some of the books that I've done, my favorite voice to narrate in that book has actually been the female, and it's and I know to a certain extent I don't have a right to, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously a female is going to be able to capture it better, but so many of those women are written so strong and so complicated and sometimes the men aren't as much, and so like the opportunity of stepping into that role, I've always, I guess, had a somewhat controversial opinion of the fact that I believe that one of the things I love about acting is I do get to explore other people's lives, even that means sometimes a different gender or a different race, or just to try to understand somebody else by stepping into their life and speaking their words. And so audiobooks has given me an opportunity to do that in a way that no other form allows me to, as a middle-aged straight white man. And so
Yeah, that's
um selfishly I love that because I feel like it's helped me have a better understanding about people in the world around me. And so I again, I kind of miss it sometimes when it's not there because I love that education.
Right. I love what you just said though, because like I'm thinking about it and I'm like, you're not going to get cast as an orc, right? You're not going to get cast as a high fae. You probably not going to get cast as a female. So this opportunity is huge. And I never thought about it before. The way that actors can expand their roles and the people that they play is huge and endless.
Well, and you think about like shows like The Voice, on television and stuff like that. I mean, if you stop and think about it, if you have a strong vocal talent, and I don't think I'm really fantastic at really extremely diverse character voices, or I'm definitely not really great at like impersonating people, but if you have a really strong vocal talent, theoretically, if people don't know who you are, you can audition for anything. And you know what I mean? It's like when you stop and think about it, a lot of the male characters on The Simpsons are voiced by female actresses, and it's, I think,
Half of the anime characters that I enjoy watching, like Naruto, is some little old lady. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
yeah, it's so freeing because in other forms of theater, especially film and television, as an actor, you begin to get very pigeonholed. You get put into this expectation, and it's because, to a certain extent, I don't disagree with it because the audience sees you, and that visual thing immediately sets up some kind of a standard in their mind of expectation,
sure.
and it's hard to kind of fight against that. And so, as a director, I know that that's one of the things I fight against sometimes. Even if I want to go in a different direction, I know the audience is going to change the story in their head if they're not seeing what their expectation is, and so that's always the challenge to it. But within voiceover and audiobooks, you don't have that limitation, which is so freeing for an actor.
Pretty cool what you're saying that even even within the romance community and even within the romance genre, you had alluded to that a little bit earlier about doing some subgenres, and I'm interested to know what those are that you do. I know you do reverse harem because I've listened to one of them, which was amazing. I loved it. Shadow, what was it? Shadow in the
Shadow of Betrayal.
Yes, yes, it was so good. Um, so I think it's cool that you can do, you can be the high fae in audiobooks. You can be the orc. You can be the hockey player, or the mountain man, or whatever. And because you have, like, it's just, I think that the romance community is super open to their favorite narrators being in all different genres within the romance community.
Yeah, it takes it to a certain extent. It takes an author and a casting director to production company willing to take a chance on you sometimes to begin to break that mold. And I credit where I am right now a lot to Nicole Fanning, because she is the first person that kind of, I feel like, took a chance on the nature of my voice for Jackson Pace and her series. And because he was a mafia don, and again, typically those mafia dons get cast with those really deep, gravelly voices. And what she appreciated about my work was that it was emotional, and she wanted Jackson to have a really wide arc through the series. And so she took that chance with me. And but then it's interesting because it's like, again, when I did Heather's books, then I was doing a lot of like young teenage voices, and I was doing those things, and it was a lot of reverse harems. And I was going through a major education about things during all of this. Because the idea that, like, the amount of fetishes and tropes that there were, I was really afraid of the FBI checking my search history.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was rough. And so then
All the
again,
abbreviations. What do all these letters mean?
I mean, like, sometimes, like, I was like, what is that machine? What does that thing do? And then I search it, and I'm like, I don't want to ever see that again. So yeah, it can get rough. And I blame Nicole for that, because she was the one that started a lot of that.
We're gonna have to have her
But I
on here
moved.
and talk about that.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. She'll get a kick out of that, because she laughed a couple of times, because I would write her and I would go, "Are you serious?" Um, but anyway, so after I kind of moved from those young reverse harem books, then, because I think I went from Heather, and then I did a C.M. Stunich series, Daughter of a Serial Killer, and again, all of these were like college, high school age kids. And then Nicole kind of gave me that first step into the mafia thing, and then all of these authors that do mafia were like, "Oh my God, we want Grayson to do that." So then I started doing that, and then I got my first fantasy series, which I think was Slaying the Frost King.
Oh, I
And
think I've heard that
I think
one.
I have that
I think,
one, actually.
yeah, I was excited. I think I have that
I
on my
have that
TBR.
one.
yeah. So that was like my first one where I did like a Russian Eastern European accent all the way through it. Um, and so then I did that, and then again, like, after I did that, I think it was more the casting directors and the authors at that time, but then I started getting a lot of fantasy stuff. And then Monty J took a chance on me with a dark romance, and then everybody kind of started seeing me as that, and that's kind of where I've been. I don't want to say stuck, but that's a lot of what I've been doing recently, is a lot of really, really dark things, and it gets progressively dark. And I will say that, like, in exploring this, all of the books, I think I've been very lucky, because they're beautifully written, and and it's been really moving to me to see, sometimes as dark as some of these books that I've done are, how the listeners respond in such a way, because they help heal something in them, which feels weird to me, because it feels like I'm helping cause trauma sometimes by the things that we're doing in these books. But for so many people, it helps heal them, and so I'm so appreciative of being able to be a part of that for them. But I have to admit, like, it's the first time that doing so many dark romances in a row, it started to kind of weigh on me, because it's like you need a palate cleanser from all of this. So, like, doing Brit's book recently, and
80s book too, right?
yes, Sadie's, yeah, which was a reverse harem. I'm back to the point right now. I'm hesitating, and I'm going silent, because I can't remember what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
We
Uh,
understand that completely.
yeah, I think I can say I just did a Brittany Nicole book. I think I can say that. I'm not going to say what it was,
You
but that was another really nice kind of palate cleanser. As a matter of fact, I think it might have been announced. I can't remember.
I
And so
understand that
that
thing. because as a reader, I can only like I can do a dark romance, but then I need to go to a rom com. Like I gotta do my cause I can't do a lot of that heavy dark stuff. All
Well, and again, I grew up with Stephen King. I mean, he's still one of my favorite authors, and so like the idea of being able to do a King book sometime, or even one of his sons' books, like that would be a dream of mine. And so, like especially with Monty J's book, her writing reminded me a lot of Stephen King.
Oh, that's high praise. That's awesome.
I told her that too. I mean, just because her characters are so complicated and in their darkness, she clarifies their reasoning behind the way that they are who they are, and 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 I love stepping into those kind of characters. And so so again, it kind of feeds me. Like, I even though I'm staying within romance, I get all of these other subgenres that I really get to enjoy. So I
Okay,
think,
I have to say, if I had a narrator who was a reader who could actually dissect like the process, the arc, everything that goes into creating a character, and then them come back with feedback like that, you would just be booked for the rest of my books. Like there would be no question there.
well, and it's and I think a lot of that is because I so many times have, like, I think one time, I don't know if she would want me to say who it was, but one of the authors like wrote me and said, "Oh my God, you made my smut sound like Shakespeare." And
Yes, that's fucking awesome.
it is, but at the same time, I mean, I appreciate that, but I can't change your words. I can't, I can give meaning to them, or more meaning to them, but I can't. And there's so many times that authors have said that to me, and it's like, you need to understand that I'm just reading your words. That's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to um, underemphasize what it is that we do as narrators, but I am only
Okay,
good
but
words.
here's an example. If you listen to someone sing a song and you hear someone do a cover of it and you're like, the cover sounds so, it makes you feel so many more emotions than like the original work, you have to admit that there is a level of like emotion that certain people can pull in different ways when they use their voice.
Yeah, yes, I admit that. I do it. But again, that's another perfect example, right? In music, this happens all the time. You never know the songwriter, but you know what I mean? Like, we tie it to a
Yeah.
singer, but most of those singers don't write their own music. It's coming from a songwriter that I can't remember who it was recently that passed away. And when I was finding out all of the people that they wrote for, it blew my mind to think about the fact that I knew that person as a songwriter, but I never knew that they were the words behind all of these really famous voices. And so yes, those voices definitely provide something to it, and I'm not gonna crap on myself enough to say that I don't bring something to it. But I feel like sometimes in the audiobook world, sometimes when those books come out, the audio starts to take too much control in a way. Like, it's still from the author. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's still of the author, and we have to acknowledge that.
yeah, and I get that, but also I'm because I consume most of my books through audio. Um, like I'll find an author because of my favorite narrators. Like I might not even know of that person, usually don't, but because I'm searching by my favorite narrators, there's about 10, and you know that you're one of them because I've tagged you in them.
Thank you.
Like I do, like I search, and it's on, and usually a one click for me. Like, okay, oh, they're narrating it. That's cool. I'll take a chance and read it. And so I don't know. I mean, I kind of think that the authors are super benefiting from the the excellence in your craft that you guys are doing and bringing to their book, because their book is great, but if it only reaches a certain niche of people, then you know then it's only great for them. But if because of you guys, it reaches these other niche of people because people freaking love you, then they're like, you know what I'm saying?
I do, and again, I'm definitely not trying to lessen what we do as narrators. I guess what I'm saying is that I'm very aware of the fact that everything that's happened to me in the last year started because of Nicole Fanning, and because she gave me the right words to allow me to be that thing that people ended up loving. Now, I do feel like I'm finally to a place a year later where maybe I am doing what you're saying, where there are certain authors that are now being discovered because people are listening to me first. And actually, I love that. If I'm able to do that for an author, because so many authors and so many co-narrators too. I mean, so many there's been so many times that I've been on a book with some female narrator that is the star. And it's because I got to ride their coattails that I am where I am. So now if I get to do that for another narrator, I don't know that I'm to that point yet, but I do feel like, yes, I agree. Sometimes, people have found an author because of me. And if that's the case, that's great, because I feel like that's what we need to do. We need to, spread the love as that happens. But I think all of us narrators have, I feel like if we're being honest, if we gain a name for ourselves, or if we gain a following, it can usually be traced back to some author that gave us the right material, that allowed us to really express who we are as an artist.
I appreciate that you're never going to be Benjamin Franklin, right? Like, you're never going to be like, I invented I invented electricity. I can appreciate that as the author side of things, but I do see where Kathy's coming from too, because if you think about prominently audiobook listeners, that they connect with your voice. Whereas if you look at the book consumers, if an author comes out with a new book, they don't even know what genre it is, they've bought it. Like, they are connected to the words on the page. So it depends on which realm of people you're talking to.
That's true.
But on both sides, I appreciate where you're coming from, because as audiobook does do its thing and get bigger, we can become like songwriters. Like, I could totally see us becoming like, who? Randy Lemons who? They wrote the book. Right. Yeah. It wouldn't be here for them. So I can totally see that eventually potentially being something that happens to us.
Yeah. I do. I see that. Yeah.
So I love this is a good conversation though.
I think that one thing that you do really well, or that you're learning to do, whatever, is that you're really engaged on social media with your fans. Like, I mean, you are constantly posting. You're constantly posting, and if people tag you, you go in and heart or think or whatever. And it's little gestures like that that really do go a long way to endearing people to you as a human. You know what I'm saying? Like, he actually appreciated that I bought that book, because it's like $12 or whatever it is for the audio. And so I think that you do that really well. Is that something that you like purposefully do, or is that just something because you're that cool guy, or what?
um, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I hate social media, and I never really participated in it until all of this stuff started happening about a year ago. And at first, things happened for me so quickly, in a great way, but also in a way that I was struggling to keep up. And one of those things I was struggling to keep up with was the idea of self-promotion, and the need for it. And there were a lot of people who came to my aid and were telling me that this is what you need to do. Like, these are the posts that you need to be doing. You need to be portraying yourself in this way so that more people become feral about you and want to do this and want to do this and want to do this. And so for about 2 months, I listened to that and I tried it. And what I quickly found is that was not me.
You.
I'm not going to create this super sexy persona about who I am, and take pictures that are not really me, of my muscles and all of this stuff, to try to portray myself as a sex symbol, because I'm a dork who sits in a booth reading books. And so um I quickly was like, I'm not going to do this. And I think that one of the very first things that I think that, like, the first social media thing that I did that kind of blew up was because trying to remember who it was. Was it? God, I can't remember who it was. A female narrator had mentioned like ordering something at Starbucks, and so that was the first time that I kind of like,
Oh, that was Andy Eloise. Did you do?
yeah,
Did you do
yes,
that? See, I wish that would have been able to actually really like follow who responded to whatever you call it. Is that what it's called?
stitching, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's what I did. It like was the first time that I ever stitched anything, and so I did. But I made a joke out of it. Like I did it in my romance voice, but I made a joke out of it. And that was the first thing that I did where then women started sending me videos of them going and buying coffee. And so like oh okay, so that's what this thing is. And it was that I really loved. Like again, as an actor, I loved the back and forth. I didn't love all of these things that was supposed to be me portraying myself as something to get people wanting to follow me. I liked the back and forth. I loved the fact that then people started responding back to me. And then then the joke that I did with the animal thing, and people like I ended the whole animal thing, like I think I did a cat and a dog and a something else, and then I said gerbil, and I realized I didn't know what a gerbil sounded like, and so I just went gerbil sound or something like that. And I still get people. There's still people that on things will comment, "When are you going to do the gerbil?" And so it's those things that I love. I love interacting with people, but at the same time, I mean, especially with things that have gone on in the romance world this year, sometimes I just hate being on social media. I can't. I feel like sometimes, just like it is in the world, a few bad actors make the whole thing seem like it's gone rotten. And 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 sometimes I feel like, how can I say this? I feel like if a personality begins to believe too much that their personality is important in the space and they're promoting themselves too much, it can go too far. And I'm always afraid of going too far with it. And so sometimes it's like you said, I will go in, and if I know that somebody's tagged me in something, I'm going to heart it, and I'm going to like it in some way, and I'm going to maybe give a quick response to it. I would prefer to spend more time doing that than trying to create content to create some kind of a persona.
Yeah.
Because I know, again, I am here because of people that are supporting me and listening to my work. And so I want to let them know that I'm hearing them back. And I hope I never get so busy that I can't do that anymore. I have to hand it off to somebody else because it is me doing that. It's not, a PA that's doing it for me or something.
Yeah. How do you balance okay, so you do the narration, you do the teaching, you have a family, and also social media. Social media is huge by itself.
Job by itself. I hate it.
I hate social media. I'm the same with you. I would love to copy and paste me and don't have to do the PA thing and they can take care of everything, but I can't.
Well, on the social media side of things, I will also admit that I have benefited again from people like Kayla and Nicole and Sadie and Sarah Kate and these authors who self promote really heavily on social media, because then I just collab with them, or I take their stuff and I'll alter it a little bit and I'll send it back out into the world. So they make my job a little easier because I'm just kind of cheating off of them. I'm cheating off of the test next to me, I guess. And again, I mean, I'm getting ready to go on sabbatical next semester, which means I get paid to do nothing. And I know it's nice. I do it every 7 years. But I'm actually going to be. One of the things that the school knows that I'm doing is I'm just exploring what it is to be a narrator full time. So it's going to be the first time that I've actually loaded myself up through June pretty heavily, and I'm going to have to kind of experience.
You're not working, but you are swamped with work.
I'm swamped with narration stuff. Yeah. And part of that is also going to be the social media thing. Like I really want to try to figure out a more, because I'm a little sporadic. Like I will send out a lot of things, and then for like a month I go completely and totally
Oh
dark.
my God, you're my twin. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I like schedule it for the month. I'm like, okay, that's my limit. They won't let me schedule any further. And then the end of the month comes and I'm like,
Well, and I'm always in awe of you authors, because the discipline that it takes to write a book I mean, if somebody didn't tell me I have to get this book done by a certain point, I would spend too much time on Netflix. Like, I mean, even the monitor I have in my booth is connected to the internet. Like, I would get distracted. So the fact of the discipline that you guys have in doing books, and especially sometimes at the frequency that you guys do.
So
Um,
I think that there's a weird connection with our characters, right? Like I think that there's an accountability piece to our characters of like we have to tell their story. So you know how you get an accountability partner and that helps, or the deadline that's set by someone else? It's almost like we have that with our characters because if we don't tell it, no one else will.
yeah, I've heard that from authors before. They woke me up in the middle of the night telling me that I had to go write this chapter. Yeah, I get that. I
Yeah.
imagine that must feel schizophrenic, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
can understand that because in the book um that I'm producing, the audiobook, like I was heavy into the manuscript and I was marking it up and doing all the things. And I like read this book probably 5 times within a span of 2 months. And and I would message the author. I'm like, geez, you know, this character is freaking talking to me like at night. Like I just be hearing, this guy's voice in my head because I knew who, we had as a narrator. So I know their voice and I'm like, fuck, leave me alone.
I, I,
We're
I
all a
love.
little crazy.
Yes.
I used to write when I was in high school. That's how I tried to pick up girls. I would write short stories, and they would pass them around. And I wish I could go back to it, but there's something about once I got into acting, like all of my artistic energy went towards that, and it kind of dissipated from the writing. But I've been really wanting to get back into that. Um, but I read Stephen King's On Writing, and he talks a lot about his characters, and he even mentions that when he had his accident, when he was I think he was jogging and he was hit by a car, and the guy who hit him got out of the truck and came over to see if he was okay. And the guy was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And Stephen King's first thought was, "Oh my God, my life depends on one of the characters I used to write in my books." So he was so haunted that like even this guy seemed to be like, as if he had written him himself.
Please don't kill me. Please don't take me into your truck. And he's like instantly, all of the worst case scenario things are so vivid in his mind right then.
Yeah,
I could
I
not
think I've
imagine
ever
being
dreamed
that.
up a book about to happen to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know how those people, they have to have like a mind of steel to not have like nightmares of their own freaking books. Like I'd be so scared. I couldn't even read Butcher Blackbird at night because I was like, no, or listen to it because I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm somebody's gonna like,
Yeah,
open my doors.
that stuff blows my mind because like I'll have moments in my book where I'm like I could kill this person, I could, and then I start thinking about actually right, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that, I can't kill this person. So immediately I'm like, those dark people who write that stuff, they have the opportunity to not take it that far, and they do,
And they
and they take it that far.
Well, and again, I won't mention the name, but there's an author that has booked me for a book that I'm not even recording until June, and they've been writing on it, and they wrote me an email just yesterday, and they were like, "This book has gone significantly darker than I thought it was going to be." And so, I didn't want it to be that way, and it was not my plan, but the characters decided differently. And so, here's the new trigger list, and I just want to make sure that you're willing to do it. And again, I respect that. I mean, I'm in awe of it when the characters take control of your work. It's amazing.
Okay, crazy theory. If we are somehow attached to like some other universes and we're literally like writing other people's, like for real, this stuff is out there and we're connected somehow to them, and yeah, I know it's crazy and
Oh,
out there,
Out
but like
there.
how does it go that way? How are we led by people who aren't real?
no, you want to know something? So I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this story. Um, I It was in grad school at NYU that I understood the deep importance of what I do as an actor, and it was because my director, we were doing the play Picnic, and my director for it was actually one of my teachers. She was our voice and diction teacher. And on the final dress night, we were taking notes, and she goes, "I'm going to tell you guys something that's going to seem kind of crazy, but I firmly believe it." And she said, I and my husband have struggled our entire lives to have a child, and we've never been able to. And I have had many miscarriages in my life. And the experience of knowing that a life was created and lost has always been very profound on me. And I believe firmly that authors are whispered to by the voices that never got to live a life. And
She's gonna
I
start.
believe, as she goes, I believe that our playwrights and our authors are giving voice to lives that never had the opportunity to speak for themselves. And your responsibility is giving them an audible voice.
That's
And
freaking amazing.
God.
yeah, it was profound. And yeah, goosebumps. I just got it again.
Yes.
Like
Oh my God.
I was so emotional that night because there is I feel like there is a truth to that. And I also read a book by an author once that was saying that she had this idea for this book, and it was about a woman who falls in love with a guy that's working on the Panama Canal, and she was writing the book, and she was getting it all structured, and then something happened in her life that she had to sidetrack the book for a while. And then she went to this conference and met this woman that she's always looked up to, another writer, and they went out and had coffee and they talked for a while, and then they separated, and she went back to trying to work on the book, and she was having trouble getting back into it again. And then a year later, she went to the same conference and met that same author that she looked up to before, and they had coffee again. And she was like, so she looked at this author that she looked up to, and she said, so tell me, like, what are you working on right now? And she goes, well, shortly after we met last time, I suddenly had the idea for this book about this woman that falls in love with this guy who's working on the Panama Canal, and I'm almost finished with it. And she was like, oh my God, the characters were so mad at me that I was not writing that book that they went and found someone else. And
Oh
it
my
that
gosh.
that's in she tells the story. I'm trying to remember the name of the author, but it's in this book called, God, I want to say it's called Big Love or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But it's another really great book about creativity and writing.
Crazy.
But I firmly believe that there is some other, like you called it, another world. I think there is something that creative,
Dimensions.
yeah, dimensions that
I
we
agree with that because come on now, how many? Okay, people are gonna think I'm batshit crazy, but
Well, yeah, we're all getting a
we're
little
all
conspiracy theory here.
if
Let's
any of
do
us
it.
so far in the nut house now, it doesn't matter.
right? Like I think that there has to be some, like there cannot be all these stories of vampires and fae and all of, like, people are not that creative. I'm sorry. People are not that creative to come up with an entire race of other people and peoples, like, sorry, I don't believe it. There's got to be something that that
We're in tune to something we don't fully understand. I agree with
yeah,
you. I think
yeah. So I do
Gosh,
have
that
some
is.
questions for you though, Grayson, because going and talking about the book that she was like, it went super dark. Is there, do you have a limit? Is there a trope or like a level of just fucked up shit that you are like, not for me, I can't do it?
um, there have been many times when I've been in the middle of narrating a book that even though I was given the trigger warnings, the specificity of where that goes, I butt right up to where that line is for me. Um, the only thing that I, from the very beginning, will say that I don't do is I do not do non-consent. Um, I sometimes will accept it and do it. Like, for instance, it doesn't happen, but in Nicole Fanning's book, there was a moment that a character that starts to almost happen, and I was okay with that. But um, any way that would in any way glorify it or try to explain it away, I have issues with. Now, if it is a portion of the story that is showing, okay, this is the big bad that we now have to go after and kill, oh, okay, I might be able to handle that. But even that, the non-consent thing is kind of, it's a hard line for me. I'm uncomfortable doing it. But I said this to somebody once, like sometimes in the middle of reading something, especially when it is something dark directly combined in the moment with something sexual, there's something about that marriage that sometimes causes a boundary issue for me. But I've often said, it's weird because, again, if it was just a horror book and it was just that violent thing, I wouldn't care. There's something about adding the element of sex to it that does play on my morals a little bit, I guess. Um, eh, but in most cases, again, I have to take a cold shower afterwards and do some hockey romance afterwards so that I can kind of move on from it.
Right.
Um, but typically I'm okay with it as long as it's not non-consent.
Yeah, I bow down to the thriller. I bow down to you guys who read the scary stuff. Like me and Kathy were reading a book and it was a rom-com book, okay? There was nothing scary going to happen in it. There was a couple it was a Halloween one. There was a couple scenes in it where I was like, "Okay, this might be getting a little bit too much for me, guys. I might need to." I'm such a big wiener. Like it is not something I can
Really?
do.
Wait, are we really? Is it really? I don't know if we can handle that. It really was like, what?
Well, it's like Run Rabbit Run, which I did a couple months ago, and I'm not going to give anything away, but it made me uncomfortable reading it the entire time because of what it seemed to be about. But then in the last chapter, there's something that happens that puts a twist on it that
Ah,
you don't see coming. And so,
but the whole time you're reading it, you are thinking that thing, and your mind is playing and going, and that
well,
is what gets me.
and the twist happened in the female POV chapter. Sometimes I don't get the opportunity of reading all of those. So
You got left in the dark?
I was left in the dark until I'd completely finished the book. And I was like, I don't like, there's a part of me that like, I feel like I just stepped into something
What
that I didn't know I was stepping
I
into.
just signed up for?
The co-narrator was like, did you read the last chapter? And I was like, that was your chapter. And they were like, yeah, you should read the chapter. And so I went back and read the chapter. I was like, oh, I'm totally okay with what I did.
Good thing to ask. So when you are prepping, do you don't read the book clearly?
I used to when I first started out for the first two
When
or
you had time?
yeah, I read the book cover to cover because I felt like it was important for the nuances and everything. But typically now I don't have the time, and it's one of those things that I've been struggling with. Um, I just did this amazing retreat with Andy Arndt and Ronnie Butler, and I was talking to them about how I'm worried that I'm always worried about not being a good co-narrator partner because I don't have the time to read the entire book, and I'm always afraid that I'm not as prepared as I need to be. But I don't know how to find more time, especially with my teaching schedule and everything. But one of the things that Ronnie kind of gave me a little bit of comfort with, he was like, "You've been doing romance for so long now, you probably are a little bit in tune to the nature of what it is.
Intuitive.
Yeah, that you don't have to do it as much." And so, typically, if I'm prepping a book, I don't read. I read my POV chapters and all of the stuff that I'm narrating in the moment, which I actually feel like makes my performances a little bit more in the moment.
Authentic.
Yeah.
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 So I prefer that. But like especially if it's a duet and I have lines in the other narrator's chapters, I will go and highlight those lines myself, or sometimes it's highlighted by the company, and in those cases I will read through the dialogue, huh? Like you.
Or by
Kathy does it.
Oh,
Kathy highlights it for
yeah,
you.
yes. So when that happens, like I will go through and I will read the dialogue, and usually I can get enough from the dialogue to know what's happening. But I'm always really grateful to those authors, and I think a lot of production companies are asking the authors to do this, that give us a little bit of a rundown of each chapter at least, so that and
Mm.
like big clues. I mean, there was one time I was reading a series, and it wasn't until the third book that they mentioned that one of the major characters said something in his thick Brooklyn accent, and I was
Oh,
like, that did not happen. That did not happen in the first two books. So
There
like,
was no accent.
what
we're
did you?
gonna cut that part out.
Yeah. So yeah. So it's those surprises like that sometimes worry.
Yeah, I feel for authors, man, because like sometimes we just get going and then later on we're like, let's add this cool detail in. But then when we're like, oh, we should also turn this into an audiobook. So now we have to think about how to say these names and how do they sound. And so it's a feat for us when we start going, but then we have to look back at all the work we did when we start trying these new things like audiobooks.
Well, right, and it's not your job. I mean, of course, you're writing it for people to read it. You're not thinking about that element of it, and so I never fault the author for it, but there have been several times that like I'll get to the end of a book or something like that, and I'm like, oh no, like what am I going to do to fix that situation? There have been a couple of times that I've actually had to go back and fully,
Redo the whole thing.
yeah, I mean, sometimes, and fortunately, it's never been like the end of a book, but there have been several times that like I'll get into like the fourth or fifth chapter with a character, and they'll say something specific about their vocal quality, and it's like I'll just go back and change the dialogue of it so that it matches what they're saying. Yeah,
Dang.
but a lot of that is again, it's my fault because I didn't have the time to read the book.
Well, and it's also like I feel like audiobooks with authors it's a very new world, right? I feel like moving forward there's going to be these outlines that'll be there. There's going to be the questions that'll be there. Like there's going to be a lot more knowledge that okay, now we should probably make sure we ask, is there any accents? Is there any, and from authors as we step into that world, now that it's becoming such a more played in world, we're going to be like, okay, now we need to give them the voice. We need to have the tone. We need to have all these things in our mind before we do the audiobook.
Yeah, I mean, I think as this industry expands, I think we have to start looking at codifying a certain sense of the way all of these things are supposed to be. I mean, I think it just helps us all work more efficiently.
I have two
Yeah.
questions for you.
Mhm.
One, are you doing? Have you started, or are you planning on starting doing the book cons?
I am scheduled to do Wild and Windy in Chicago in May. I was lined up to do Dark Star, but then when that got changed, I decided not to
But you
go.
didn't come to the lemonade party. I was there, by the way.
You were?
I was.
Uh, I had to. I had found out that I had gotten invited to this retreat that Andy did, and when that happened, it was relatively expensive, the whole process and the travel and all that stuff, and so I needed to save money somewhere, and so I saw value in what it was that Troy was doing with that conference, but it was not what I felt like I needed at the time.
Yeah, I get
Um,
it.
and, yeah, and sometimes the cons for the narrators, they're hard. It's not, you don't, other than the face-to-face contact with the fans, which again I love, it's kind of hard to sometimes adjust to the ROI on the expenses that it takes.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
I get it.
but so I'm doing Wild and Windy, but I'm also going to APAC this year, and then I'm also, because part of my research next semester is other forms of voiceover. I'm going to VO Atlanta as well, to learn like animation and stuff like that.
That's cool.
My other question for you is, well, one, I'm just going to give you a little suggestion. When you do go to those book cons, take something. Like, do you have swag or something that you can take? I know Addicted to the Voice has their stuff for you, but if you have just like a little anything,
Yeah,
even
I've already
stickers
talked
from
to.
the show, because we're going to give you stickers that you can print.
Okay.
I would say,
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I've already talked to Addicted to the Voice about that. That I wanted at least some stickers to be able to hand out, and then I think then I'm going to have like a QR code that allows people to be able to do purchase stuff too. But I'm going to try to have some giveaway stuff, and
yeah,
I think I was working with a PA for a while that I think is also going to create. Um, I don't feel comfortable signing an author's book. It just doesn't feel right to me. So I'm going to create inserts for the book so that I sign that and you put that in the book that have a clear, so that you can still see the title page and everything, and it looks like I signed it. But so I'm planning on having those as a giveaway too.
That's very cool. My other question for you is, if an author came to you and said, I'm going to write a book for Grayson's voice, what would that look like? What would Grayson like to have a character? What kind of character? What would that look like? We want to know.
I uh, like audibly sound. I don't think I can't think of what that would be, but I what I feel like the kind of characters again that I like to play are the really complicated ones. I like the ones that go through some kind of a major change or discover something, very important about themselves and are very different at the end of the book than they were at the beginning. Um, that it's those complicated things that really make me want to get in this booth every day to do that, to experience that character arc that's going on. And again, it doesn't necessarily matter if that character is in a rom-com or a really dark, thriller, fantasy, romantic book, whatever it is. It's that nature of that complication of character and the kind of internal emotional turmoil that they're going through and trying to change something about themselves. That's what I'm usually really attracted to.
So what does the future, like, what do you hope for to happen for you with narration and your path in acting and kind of dreaming of what's next for you?
I love working in romance, and I will never quit that. But I really want to get into some other genres. I'm working really hard right now to try to do that. I've always wanted to do thrillers and horror and especially lit fic. I really love literary fiction, and I really want to do some more of that. I do a lot of nonfiction business work, and I do like doing that too. That's another really wonderful palate cleanser because it's just trying to get the facts straight in it, pretty much, and delivering in a way that makes people want to listen to it. But that's where I'm headed, and I'm really wanting to start working for some of the bigger publishers too, just to kind of get that experience. So that's what I'm working on over the next couple of months, is really trying to figure out the best practices that I need to do to get to that point. And again, a lot of that is just kind of like a personal education about the way that this business works, because I've just been kind of sailing on the water, floating on the water. I'm not even sailing. I'm just floating.
We
Yes,
start building your boat. You're just building your boat now.
exactly.
Okay, but also you probably shouldn't build your boat while you're in the middle of the water. It might make things a little complicated.
Probably. It's just me and Kate Winslet on that broken door panel.
Tell her to scoot over. There's enough room for you.
Yeah, no question, there was enough room.
Yeah.
I like
Oh,
that.
that's funny.
So what are you working on now that you kind of want to tell our listeners about, get them excited about, and have them? Because obviously, if anyone has listened to you this far, I want to go and read about your books. The amount of emotion that you put into telling the story of the authors and the connection you have with their stories, like, I'm sold. Just tell me the name of it and the title, and I'll go buy it.
Right now, I'm working on my third Grace McGinty book, which is a multicast, um, and and then, like I said, Britt Benson's Better Than the Beach just came out this week. Um, I'm trying to remember the things that I can say. It was just announced yesterday that I'm going to be doing Lee Rivers' Little Liar. And so I'm doing that in March with Heather Firth. I'm trying to think of what else I can say. There's a couple of like really big announcements I've been sitting on for months that I so much want to say and I can't say them yet. So I'll be doing a mixture of like dark romance and rom coms, and a few wide chooses over the next few months, and then I have a nonfiction book about the science of arousal uh, that I'll be working on in January, which is a very different thing, but also kind of the same.
Okay, I think I might need to read that for any future romance books that I write. I'm just saying.
I'll let you know when it's available. So I've got I've got a wide spattering of things that are coming out, and a lot of it is kind of like hush hush. So um, a lot of the things that I'd planned on kind of mentioning to you, then I knew I could say when we talked about doing this a few months ago, they've already been out. So and
Yeah.
that was Wrote Me In by Kayla Gross, and Axes and O's actually just came out by Kayla as
I was
well.
just looking, yeah.
Say that again.
I was just looking at what was, and that was one of the top ones that just came.
Yeah, that was the last one before Better Than the Beach, I think.
I'm so excited to read her or listen to you do her books because she features curvy women, curvy heroines in her books.
Kayla,
Yes,
yeah,
super
and she does
excited
it.
to listen to.
She does it so well because out of the books that I've read for her, there was only one book where the woman's curviness was an issue for her. I mean, it's just a descriptive quality, which I love. It's not a cause of trauma for these women. It's just who they are, and the men are crazy for it in the books too, which is just it. Her books are so fun. They can get. She's another one that I've had to look up a lot of stuff.
Gotta have her on. You think she'll come on? Will you put in a good word? I want to get
Oh,
her on here. Kayla,
oh
come
yeah,
on the show with us.
def- I think
Please.
she loves doing this stuff. Again, she's another author that works really hard in her self promotion, and so
Yeah,
I think it too. Um, so yeah, I love doing her work. I'm honored that she uses me so frequently.
yeah, that's amazing.
I will say that you saying that also say like, see, this is growing pains for us. When we have people submit their applications and we get them in, sometimes it can take months to get them on the show because we are already booked into March. So figuring out a way that is like fixing our application process or something, like there's growing pains always in stuff that you do.
Well, and again, I mean, it's because typically for the last several months, again, a lot of the stuff that I have coming up, I'm not really supposed to talk about, and so that time when you had me filling out the application was just this perfect time because there was a bunch of stuff that was getting ready to come out that I could.
I was so
Um,
excited when you said, "Yeah, I'll do it." I was like, "Yes."
no, I love doing this. I'm afraid that I said too much today. I might have.
So actually, I'm gonna go in and edit a lot of this out because just too much talking. We've just been talking too much. We shouldn't do this on a podcast. I don't know who thinks they should come on a podcast and talk. So yeah.
Especially,
Well, I was gonna ask like what your piece of advice is for someone, but I think we know what your piece of advice is for someone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's don't be again ask the right questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to look stupid. And if you make a mistake, own up to it. I mean, I think that's the big thing right now. I mean, yeah, of course, there's all of these things that you need to do on the business side of things, and all these things that you need to do on the acting side of things. But a lot, especially in romance landia right now, I think that the biggest thing is that we have to give each other a little bit of space, and a little bit of forgiveness and a little bit of grace. I mean, you have to be willing to dish out that grace and then also be willing to accept it too.
agreed. Where can people find you? Um, if they want to, if they want to hire you, which I would highly recommend that you hire him. Um, Stephen
Yeah.
King,
Oh, wait, hang on, hang on.
yeah,
Okay. For the
for
hiring
hiring
part.
part, for the hiring part, and then also as your fan base grows, like where can they find you?
So on socials, on Instagram and TikTok, you can actually say this two different ways. It's either Grayson the Mic, so GraySonThemic, or you can also say that uh, Gray's on the mic, which is the way actually most people pronounce it when they see it. That was an accident, and it's fine. And then my website is actually the same. So it's www.graysonthemic.com. So you can hear samples there, and then there's a contact field there. And then I work with many of the smaller production companies, production houses, and so you can usually ask for me with one of them as well. Or if you don't know who you want to work with and you want to contact me directly, but you do want to work with one of those production companies, then I'm happy to make recommendations as well.
That's awesome. This is a badass episode. I'm just
Yes.
saying, we got controversial, like we got all out there, and then some good conversation that needs to happen, I think.
It means the world to me when people want to play with me. I'm not.
We're in the same sandbox, so let's play this.
It's so weird. Like somebody, it was one of Kayla's readers posted something about X's and O's, and I just liked it, and I made some kind of a comment in it, and she wrote, Kayla was like, "Oh my God, he responded to me," and I'm like crying about it, and I was like, that feels so weird to me. Like I still can't imagine that anybody in their home sees that I've responded to something and they respond in that way. Like I'm still not used to that thing. So it's
Okay, listen, we're going to have you back on another session, Grayson, and it's going to be to work on your belief system and how much you do not believe you deserve everything you're getting. So that's going to be a whole other call. We'll send you an invoice for, no, I'm just kidding.
yeah. And again, this is one of the things that Andy Arndt did to me several times during this retreat is I would say something and she was like, "You need to change the word of that." And I was like, "Okay."
She's so great. I love her.
Okay.
Yeah, she is amazing. She really, I mean, she and Ronnie both are just, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life because it was just so,
All
it was
right.
so,
Well, I guess I'll be okay with you not going to New Orleans and, hanging out with us there and doing like the bar crawl and all the fun stuff that we did, but it's okay. You can go.
we'll come to Chicago. We can think there.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah, we had, I mean, Nicole and Kayla and I had it all set up. We were going to go on a ghost hunt together, and we had it all set up, and we didn't get to do it. So
Next time.
yeah,
Troy,
yeah,
put that together again. So
This was an amazing episode, Grayson. I loved having these conversations. Thank you so much for being on, and I want to have you on again. Like, let's keep doing this.
yes,
absolutely. I'm honored that you guys asked me. So
it was
anytime.
fun. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. We'll see you on the next one. Hey, guys. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. Remember, every story has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep listening.